huge hangar doors groaned as they slid open. Inside, the darkness was absolute. April 14th, 1945. Friedrichroda, Germany. The Third Reich was collapsing. Smoke from burning documents drifted through the cold air, stinging the eyes. Sergeant Don Miller raised his flashlight. The beam cut through the dust, dancing over scattered tools and empty oil drums. He expected to find a tank, maybe a stockpile of rifles. Instead, the light hit something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't a machine. It looked like a monster. A giant metallic bat sleeping in the shadows. No tail, no propeller. Just a sleek, jagged wing that seemed to swallow the light. Miller gripped his Thompson submachine gun tighter. If you enjoy uncovering the secrets history tried to bury, please take a quick second to subscribe to the channel. Miller took a step forward. The air inside the workshop smelled of pine sawdust and high-octane fuel. A strange mix. It smelled like a furniture shop, and a mechanic's garage had been smashed together. His boots crunched on broken glass. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant rumble of artillery. Behind him, Private Kowalski whispered, "Sarge, what the hell is that?" Miller didn't answer. He couldn't. He had seen Messerschmitts. He had seen Focke-Wulfs. He knew every silhouette in the Luftwaffe identification book. This was in none of them. "Stay by the door," Miller said. "But Sarge, watch the door." Miller moved closer to the craft. It was alien. The wingspan was massive, over 50 feet, but the body was smooth, lacking the jagged edges of normal fighters. Two large voids gaped at the front, air intakes, like the nostrils of a dragon. Miller reached out and touched the skin of the aircraft. He expected cold steel or aluminum. He frowned. It felt warm. It felt like wood, plywood. He tapped it with his knuckle. A dull thud echoed. The Germans were building their superweapon out of trees. But then he looked into the cockpit. The instrumentation was advanced. Too advanced. And in the back of his mind, he remembered the intelligence reports, rumors of a wonder weapon. Something fast, something invisible. In a diary found days later in a nearby barrack, a German test pilot had written about this machine. The entry was dated just weeks prior. "We are flying on the edge of a razor blade. The speed is intoxicating. But the engines, they are temperamental beasts. If they fail, we do not glide. We fall like a stone." Miller circled the craft. He found the engines buried deep inside the wing root. Jumo 004 jet engines. The same ones used on the Messerschmitt 262, but harnessed differently here. This wasn't just a plane. It was a flying wing. The Horten Ho 229, the dream of the Horten brothers. Suddenly, a metallic clang rang out from the catwalks above. Miller spun around, raising his weapon. "Come down!" he shouted. "Hands high!" A figure emerged from the shadows of the rafters. A man in a white lab coat, not a uniform. He looked tired, defeated. He raised his hands slowly, holding a sheaf of papers. "Don't shoot," the man said in broken English. Miller kept the gun trained on his chest. "Who are you?" "I am an engineer," the man replied. "I am waiting for you." "For me?" "For the Americans, before the Russians come." The engineer walked down the metal stairs, his steps echoing. He stopped 10 feet from Miller and gestured to the bat-like machine. "You are looking at the future," the man said. Miller scoffed. "It's made of wood, pal." The engineer smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "That is not just wood." He stepped closer, ignoring the gun. "It is plywood, glue, and charcoal. Miller lowered the barrel an inch. Charcoal? Carbon dust, the engineer whispered, mixed into the glue between the layers. Why? To absorb the radar waves. Miller felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold hangar. Radar doesn't see it? It sees a ghost, a bird, maybe nothing at all. Miller looked back at the plane. If this was true, everything changed. The British radar chain that saved England during the Blitz? Useless. The American warning systems? Blind. This thing could cross the channel in 20 minutes. Drop a bomb, and be gone before the sirens even started to wail. Why is it still here? Miller asked. No fuel, the engineer said, and no time. The orders were to burn it. Why didn't you? Because it is beautiful. Miller looked at the papers in the man's hand. Blueprints, calculations, the DNA of the beast. He realized the danger wasn't over. The Russians were advancing from the east. They were less than 50 miles away. If they found this, if they took this technology... Miller grabbed the engineer by the arm. Kowalski, he yelled. Yeah, Sarge? Get the radio. Call HQ. Tell them we need a transport truck. Big one. Now. Yesterday, Kowalski. Move. Miller looked at the engineer. How many more are there? This is the V3, the prototype. The V2 crashed. Crashed. One engine failed. Pilot Ziller. He tried to save it. Another diary entry, this one from Reimar Horten, the mastermind, detailed that day. I watched the smoke rise from the field. It was not just a machine burning. It was our hope. Ziller gave his life for the aerodynamic truth. The wing works. The engines failed the wing. Miller didn't care about aerodynamic truth. He cared about the war ending. But looking at the Ho 229, he saw the next war starting. They had to move it. Now. The next 6 hours were a blur of shouting and sweating. A recovery team arrived. They dismantled the outer wing panels. The center section, housing the cockpit and engines, was heavy. Dead weight. They hooked up chains to a half-track. Easy, Miller shouted. Watch that landing gear. The massive tricycle gear looked sturdy, borrowed from a bomber, but the wood skin was fragile. They dragged the Predator out into the daylight. Under the sun, it looked even more alien, like a prop from a science fiction magazine. Soldiers stopped to stare. Cigarettes hung loosely from open mouths. What in God's name is that? A corporal asked. German souvenir, Miller muttered. They loaded it onto a flatbed trailer. The engineer sat in the jeep behind them, clutching his blueprints like a Bible. As the convoy started to move, a distant thud shook the ground. Russian artillery. Getting closer. Miller sat in the passenger seat of the lead truck. He watched the trees pass by. He imagined the Ho 229 in the air. 600 miles per hour. 2 30mm cannons. 2 500-kilogram bombs. It would have been a slaughter. If Hitler had mass-produced these a year earlier, London would be burning. D-Day might have failed. The B-17s, the flying fortresses, would have been sitting ducks. Miller looked at the tarp covering the shape on the trailer behind him. He whispered, "Stay down, you ugly bastard." And somehow, it did. They made it to the railhead just as the sun was setting. The Ho 229 V3 was secured in a boxcar, marked for shipment to the United States. Destination, Operation Seahorse. Later, captured documents revealed the true intent, the 3x1000 project. The Nazis wanted a plane that could carry 1,000 kilograms of bombs, fly 1,000 kilometers per hour, and travel 1,000 kilometers deep into enemy territory. The Ho 229 was the closest they ever got. Decades later, the Horten lived on. Not in the skies over Europe, but in a storage facility in Maryland. The Smithsonian Institution kept it. For 50 years, it sat in pieces. A curiosity, a myth. But the question remained, was it really stealth? Or was that just a legend spin by desperate men? In 2008, a team from Northrop Grumman, the makers of the B-2 Spirit bomber, decided to find out. They used the original blueprints. They built a full-scale replica. They tested it against World War II-era radar frequencies. The results were chilling. The wooden skin, the carbon glue, the shape. It reduced the radar detection range by 20%. That doesn't sound like much. But in 1945, it meant the difference between life and death. It meant the British radar operators would have seen the Ho 229 only when it was 8 minutes away from the target. Too late to scramble Spitfires. Too late to aim the anti-aircraft guns. It was the first true stealth fighter. Miller survived the war. He went home to Ohio. He opened a hardware store. But sometimes, when he looked at a sheet of plywood, he remembered. He remembered the smell of the hangar, the cold eyes of the engineer, and the shape that shouldn't have existed. If you want to discover more forgotten stories of the machines and men who defined the 20th century, subscribe. We dig deep into the archives to bring the truth to light. War creates heroes. It creates villains. But sometimes it creates monsters that outlive them all. The Horten 229 was one of them, a shadow from the past, warning us about the future.